So my presentation is going to look at maybe a slightly controversial subject, but looking at how you can optimize not just for SEO and search engines, but actually how things are changing not just today, but into the future and where we're going, so way beyond search engines. So to start off, can anyone imagine a future with no websites? Sounds crazy, right? So when I started doing SEO, this was in 2003, the dominant search engines at that time, AltaVista, Lycos, Yahoo, MSN, I mean, Google were on the scene, but they're nowhere near the dominant player that they are today. And I often think, if you think about, say, 10, 15 years ahead, it's really hard right now to think beyond today, like Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc. None of those are guaranteed, and none of those have the right to still be around in 10 years' time. And when you look ahead into the future, I find it's interesting if you look back, because when you look back 10, 15 years, everything was completely different. And if you're trying to look forward 10 to 15 years, you don't know what's ahead. So actually, I think it's trying to look at some of the trends on where people are going. If you look at some of the investment in, say, like Amazon hiring people into kind of AI development right now, there's so much investment in future technologies that clearly all of these big brands are pushing this as much as they can. And I find that it's easy to assume that SEO is still about keywords, rankings, on-page optimization, links, and in many ways it is. But the thing I think that is easy to forget is that SEO isn't always about search engines. It's about people. And if people change their behaviors, we have to change our marketing to reflect those behaviors. So if people are using, mobile's been the big one over the last certainly the last 5 years or more in terms of smartphones. If you look at mobile usage, the trends have gone up significantly to the point that it's now clearly outweighing desktop. Voice search, again, I'll come on to this in a bit more detail later in the presentation, but this is becoming much more popular, not just with mobiles and Siri, but also with the home devices. And again, VR. If VR was to become more mainstream, this is how people are searching for content, experiences, answers to their questions. A scary stat is that the average time people spend on their mobile is 4 hours per day. And again, this means that this is where people are. Interestingly, I saw this only a couple of weeks ago, but mobile advertising has now overtaken TV advertising for the first time ever. To me, it's crazy. It was crazy when online overtook TV. And now that mobile has done that, it's a significant shift in the whole landscape of what we're looking at. So to be visible today, starting by just looking at the mobile side of things, it's not just about being mobile first in terms of your strategy. Clearly, that's very important. I would say you also need an app. Certainly, there's a lot of brands that we're working with where they find their conversion rates on mobile is nowhere near as strong as desktop. My advice is always, but try and push them into an app. Once you've got them on your app, you've captured them. You bypass Google. That means that if someone's looking for, let's say it's a property and they've downloaded your app, rather than going to Google, they're much more likely to go straight to your app and look for it. That's exactly where you want to be. You start to own and build that audience, and then you're in a much stronger position. If Google was to disappear, that audience is still there and it's still yours. And in general, the brands that are building the audiences and have that reputation, they're the ones that win in Google anyway. So app usage is much more popular than browsers. Even today, last year, that's only going to go one way. So make sure that when you have an app, you're doing as much as possible to optimize that. Martin Sorrell from WPP did a prediction, which was the future is essentially no websites, 15 apps, 30 niches. And again, pretty scary in terms of what everyone in this room does today. But in a lot of ways, it makes sense. If you have the 15 core apps that you use on a day-to-day basis, and again, maybe right now that is the likes of Google, Amazon, Facebook, And then you have your own niches and local interests, sports, etc., that's specific to you. That's what you use on a daily basis. And again, those trends are only going in one direction. So make sure you're doing ASO. There's a lot of tips to get started. Some of it is like doing SEO kind of back in 2003. But again, it's about providing that best experience for your customers. There's no point being a well-optimized app that gets lots of downloads if everyone hates your app and then uninstalls it. So, but make sure you can do things like optimize the app title, find the top keywords. Doing keyword research for this can be a bit of trial and error. You'll get stats around the number of apps that are optimized for that keyword, not specifically the number of searches for that. So you have to learn what's good for you. And a bit like organic search and SEO, you can fast track some of the trends with paid. So in terms of learning, do A/B tests with the graphics. So again, that can improve your download rates, encourage reviews, because the more positive reviews you have, the more likely it is that people are going to install and you'll be listed highly. And again, localize for those target regions. So I think step one is have an app strategy, and then you're defensible, a lot more defensible for mobile. And also look at feature snippets. So I know there's a more in-depth talk about feature snippets coming up later today, and I think it's a very important point because Google have been testing with this a lot recently. Whenever Google does a test, in my opinion, they do that because obviously they want to roll it out further, and you always have to look at what are the motivators behind Google running a test. Normally it's to A, improve the user experience, and B, it's normally to make them more money. The sweet spot is both. In this case, you'll find this is what it looks like today. So the time in LA, you now get the time at the top. During the test, all you got was the time and no results at all. There's 202 million results for this search. So if Google takes away the organic listings, that's 202 million people that are potentially not getting traffic. Admittedly, if you're 2 million and 2, you probably wouldn't be getting traffic anyway. But if you're on page 1, you would be. So like timeanddate.com, for example, would lose a lot of traffic from this specific change. And again, this is a trend that we see more and more. Another thing I found really interesting was that Google's result click-through rate is going down. And that means that people are finding the answers to their questions from Google without having to click a listing. So the big trend here is if you compare February 2006 to 2008, the organic mobile click-through rate was 58% in 2016, and it was 38% in 2018. The shift has come in a small part towards paid. Paid's gone up from 1.8 to 3.1, but the bulk of that has gone in the no clicks for a listing, which is huge. So again, people are finding the answers to their questions. I think brands are going to have to start thinking about actually the impressions and the branding that they have behind this, because being visible on a search result, even if you don't get a click, is good positive branding. So it's something that can't be ignored, because if you're answering that question, featured answer snippets are a good example for this as well, so the answer boxes. The more you can do that, the more likely you are to build that brand, but don't necessarily always expect to generate traffic from everything that you rank for, even if you're number one. So you need to ensure that you have structured data, and again, I think Barry's going to talk about that a bit later, but marking up popular questions to appear as featured snippets, answer results, etc. And again, I think in one case, the way things have changed is if in 2018, you shouldn't really be scared about algorithm updates anymore. If you're doing things the right way, in some ways you should be looking forward to the algorithm updates because they should reward you rather than penalize you. What you should be scared of is that Google are going to start taking away organic traffic from some of these queries. And again, I'm not saying that to scare people. I'm saying that because you need to invest in building a brand and do things the right way. And everyone in this room should have a brand that if Google disappeared, you don't disappear with it. So it's thinking about how you can be the right kind of results and experience for your users and customers. Again, a big stat that is bandied around a lot is that 50% of searches will be voice search in 2020. This sounds, when I first heard this, very unrealistic. 2020 doesn't sound that far away to me. However, one thing I find quite interesting is sometimes when I speak to people who are, let's say, kind of 20 to 35 sort of age range, they generally downplay this and think, that's not going to happen, it won't take off. When I speak to people who have kids who are teenagers, their answers are, yeah, of course. My kids use voice all the time. They don't even use a laptop. And that's the future. That's where things are going to go. Whether it's by 2020 or not is open to debate. We'll find out in about 18 months. But I'm pretty sure it will get there. And certainly when you look at the trends of what the younger generations are doing, that clearly is a big indicator. The other thing is, don't just look at voice search in terms of what they're doing today. The plan for voice search, there's a big Google I/O event yesterday in the US. The plan is about moving from digital assistants to digital agents. So Google were talking about the Google Assistant, and essentially what this means is it's not just about what's the weather, what are opening times for stores. It will move into what are your brand preferences, what are your credit card details, how do you research a holiday and book something instantly through that. And again, we're not quite there yet, but that's certainly the way that things are looking to be heading. And again, Alexa, Google, they're trying to improve their experience behind this. So it's not just those search questions. If you try Alexa, let's chat, the AI behind this is now learning about your personality, your preferences. You can have a conversation with Alexa, and it's pretty scary in terms of where things could be heading in this regard. And my take is the brands that will win are the ones that are doing something about it now. If you wait until 2020 when this is really popular, the chances are you will be too late. Has anyone seen the Vitality ads on the tube? So there's a dog everywhere. And the reason they're doing this is to push the Alexa app that they have. So there's a promotion that Vitality will give away an Amazon Echo for their new customers. And essentially, if you install that app, I did this a few weeks ago, you then go through a series of questions where you can have a recipe or a workout. It's quite a smooth process, so you don't have to say Alexa every time. You just say, Alexa, install the Vitality app, and then you have a conversation around your meal preferences for a breakfast, for example. At the end of that, the call to action is, do you want to download this to your phone? So you can still take it on a device, but it's very interesting to see that the brands that are investing in this experience, they will get great PR and marketing value from just being first right now. But in the long term, if they're building that audience and they have that already, they're certainly the ones that I would back to win. And what does voice and AI mean for us and our customers? So interestingly, in 2017 already, 13% of households in the US already owned a smart speaker. That's expected to rise to 55% by 2022. And again, it's all about usage. If people aren't using these devices, whether that's VR or voice search, that's only going to, it's not going to take off. Whereas actually, if they are using it, that's where we have to be front of mind because that's what they're using to get there. Virtual reality is the great example. So if you could find your next home from the comfort of your sofa, that sounds so much easier than viewing properties, for example. Think about how you can be that result. Also, again, with this, it's just about understanding about first, from a marketing perspective, how do you create the best experience that is listed if you ask a question like, I don't know, what bar to go to tonight that's close to where we are right now. You need to have an experience in order to be featured as a listing. The next thing that I think is really clever with this is you have to be the one that actually lights people's eyes up when they look at it, because the VR devices are more intelligent in the sense they can see what you react to. They can see actually if your eyes are reacting positively to an experience, which is, again, scary but brilliant at the same time. And artificial intelligence is already here. It's being used for RankBrain, Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa. It's not just the future. This is definitely being applied right now and today. And SEO is no longer about desktop search, and it hasn't been for a while. We know that with mobile, but it's not always just about search engines. It's about taking that next step and thinking about what you can do to be present in every experience possible. So if you're early to the game, you can gain a clear advantage on your competitors. If you wait until everyone's doing it, you're too late. Now's the time to get a head start for sure. The interesting thing about all of these things, so whether it's voice search, VR, or AR, mobile apps, even feature snippets to a certain extent, none of these require a website, certainly in terms of a click-through. All of these are growing trends. If you look at the trend of the mobile click-throughs that are going down, that's organic search and search traffic in general is on a slightly downward trend. So if you look at all of this combined and then try and think ahead 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I think it's very interesting to see where things are going. And again, I always like to think that everything's changing, but nothing's changed. When I started doing SEO in 2003, I did it to help brands to reach their customers in the way that they're searching. If I'm still doing this in 10 or 15 years' time, I would be doing it for exactly the same reasons. The difference is the devices that people will be using are likely to change. So if this is where your customers are going, you have to be there. It's not just about being number one in Google anymore. It's about being the best answer for your customer at the right point in time, wherever that may be. Thanks for listening, and I think we've got time for a couple of questions.